Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Today I'd like to welcome our guest Judith from the United States, who takes LDN for MCAS, EDS and POTS. Thank you for joining us today, Judith.
Hi, glad to be here.
So could you tell us your story? When did you first notice there was something wrong with you?
Oh, I've known my entire life. I'm currently 51 and I started having major issues in my teens, but of course we didn't know what it was. You just kind of muddled through the best that you could. When I had my kids, I wanted better for them and I would not settle for, oh, it's just growing pains and oh, they're lightheaded. It's a thing that happens. They'll outgrow it. It'll be fine. And I wanted to understand why they kept reacting to everything around them. So I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. So they were diagnosed in 2019 and I was diagnosed in 2020.
Wow. So what symptoms had you been living with all those years?
Probably the worst for me has been joint pain and joint instability. It was a little bit better in my 30s. But starting in my teen years, my knees would rotate out weirdly. My kneecaps would actually roll off to the side of my leg all the time for the EDS issues. I would have issues eating food. I'd break out in weird rashes, or just get this like ants under the skin kind of feeling from various things. And then I'd be perfectly fine the next time. So I couldn't even be like, oh, well, I shouldn't have strawberries because it wasn't consistent. As far as the POTS went, I am one of the lucky ones on that. It was really bad when I was a teenager. I never actually passed out, but by the time I was about 25, I wasn't even getting lightheaded anymore. Now I'm in perimenopause. It's all coming raging right back. But I had a good maybe 15, 22 years of not having POTS symptoms. It was great. It's back, but it was great for a while.
Okay. So would you mind talking about your children?
I have their permission.
Okay. So what kind of symptoms were they experiencing?
So my middle child had probably the worst symptoms from very early on, experiencing all kinds of GI issues, like from the age of 3. Massive GI issues, abdominal migraines was something that was tossed around a lot. Scoliosis by the age of 8 that needed surgical repair at the age of 12, had ended up with a 58-degree curve that was starting to collapse. Mast cell issues definitely reared their heads immediately after surgery. Of course, we had no idea what was going on at that point. We're still researching the GI problems. We were in 9 years of trying to figure out why we had such major GI issues. POTS and MCAS hit full force immediately after surgery. He started passing out constantly, convulsive syncope, which was terrifying, and no one in our area knew what it was. We were told functional neurological disorder. I refused to accept that was what was going on. We were already in therapy because of medical trauma, and the therapist assured me that no, it was not FND, keep pushing. So we pushed and we pushed and we pushed. We ended up being able to get in with a specialist online for some consults, who was able to help us with the diagnosis of POTS and help us get to doctors in our area that could be a little more helpful. The MCAS diagnosis was a little longer in coming, but she helped us with that as well. As far as ordering tests and helping doctors in our area kind of sort through the results. Our primary care actually, right before we got to the specialist, the primary care was like, let's try this med I've heard about. It's called cromolyn, and just see if it helps some of these rashes and itching and this stuff, and just see what happens. And it like stopped. We still had other things to figure out. He was getting migraines that were like hospitalization worthy migraines. It was a really bad 2-year period. There were several times I wasn't entirely sure he was going to make it through, not because of the complexity of the medical, but just the mental toll. I was very thankful that we were already in therapy, because he needed that to be able to shoulder that load at the age of 12. My oldest child was also having issues, but not nearly as crisis mode as those. But again, they had been lifelong. Hers had primarily been rashes to things in the environment, even cleaning supplies, scents in the air. As an infant, even reacting to diapers, all of them. We had to switch to cloth diapers to get away from it. And they kept saying, well, it's not eczema, but it's eczema, but it's not, because the eczema treatments aren't working. And after we figured out the EDS, the POTS and the MCAS for the sibling, we were able to get her checked out. No, look, it's the same thing. She had been walking on the side of her foot when she was younger. She turned out to have an extranavicular bone that I guess is actually fairly common. But between the laxity of the EDS tendons and the bone pushing the tendon further out, she was constantly twisting her ankles and required surgery to fix it. And she has swallowing issues that they think are EDS related. We're lucky that her MCAS issues seem to be a lot more mild and more along more the what looks like eczema and the under the skin creepy crawly thing, as opposed to the severe migraines and the anaphylaxis that her sibling experienced for so many years.
Okay, and you just have the 2 children, do you?
I have a third. He has lucked up on everything except the EDS. He did require surgery for scoliosis at the age of 15. Between 13 and 15, he went from having a straight spine to growing sideways. He had a 67-degree curve in 2 years that needed to be repaired. He had a very brief issue with POTS that seems to have cleared up when the testosterone hit. He hit puberty and his stuff seems to have cleared up for the most part. So I'm hopeful, really hopeful that it stays away. Of the 3, he's had the least issues. Very thankful for that.
So when your children found the right team to help them cope with all these different symptoms and you got diagnosed, what was the protocol? Did you all have a similar protocol, or was it completely individual?
No. It's so individual. My middle child, I think absolutely everything got thrown at him just to get him stabilized. There was one point he was on 30 medications. We have pared it down to 12 over the last few years. And we try periodically to see if we can reduce them a little bit more, but he might be on these 12 for the long haul. We don't seem to be able to alter these all that much. He is unable to take singular, which we had really hoped would be helpful. My oldest child and I take Singulair, and it really helps the MCAS issues so much. But he can't tolerate it at all. He is on cromolyn and on antihistamines multiple times a day. My oldest child can't take antihistamines. Actually, oddly has allergic reactions. I'm not sure if they're allergic or MCAS reactions. It's one of the two, but she has reactions to antihistamines, so they're no-goes. But she is on cromolyn and Singulair. I am able to manage mine with once daily antihistamines and the Singulair, with some occasional topical application of cromolyn for those spots that just start to itch and won't stop no matter what you're doing, that like down to the bone itch.
Okay, so when did you start the LDN?
So the low-dose naltrexone, I think my middle child started in 2020, because we wanted desperately to get him off of so many pain medications. He was on gabapentin 4 times a day, like the maximum dose that he could take, and we just didn't want him on that long term. So he's been able to drop that down to 200 milligrams a day, plus his low-dose naltrexone. I had been taking Aleve for 15, 20 years and really didn't like what it was doing to my liver. And talked to our neurologist about letting me trial the low-dose naltrexone as well. I've been on that for just over a year. It's been amazing. I didn't realize how much pain I was in until I wasn't actually in it anymore. And my oldest child has also been on it for around a year. We went on it for about the same time. I am not sure how much impact it's having on the MCAS issues, just because it's so hard to track those symptoms. It's so difficult to track. But it's really obvious for us when it comes to the pain, how much of an impact that's had.
How would you compare your quality of life now to prior to being diagnosed, when just random things kept happening?
Oh, so much better. So much better now. Even my mental health is better because I'm not constantly worried about what's going to happen when I go out to eat, what's going to happen when I'm out at the mall. I don't have nearly the concerns, especially when my kids are involved. For myself, I think like most parents, you put yourself somewhere in the back seat. But not being in pain is amazing. I didn't realize the toll that was taking on absolutely every decision I made about how I was going to do things throughout the day or even throughout the year, planning trips to the grocery store around other things so that I'd have the spoons to get through it all. I didn't really realize that I was making decisions based on how I felt.
Wow, that was truly amazing. So what would you say to other people who have got children themselves that are having strange things happening and you haven't got a diagnosis? People don't know how to treat them.
Keep pushing for answers. If the answer you've been given doesn't seem to fit, if it doesn't feel right, keep pushing, keep looking for answers, talk to other parents. I know it's the one thing the doctors tell us don't do. Don't talk to the other parents. I can't tell you how many times I was told, stop getting in the parent support groups. Do it. Get in the parent support groups. Don't take anything at face value. Don't be like, oh, well, my kid had this symptom, so this is what your kid has. No, but is it worth investigating? Probably. It's at least worth questioning. Can we rule something out? Can we be sure this isn't it? I don't know that we ever would have landed on diagnosis if it wasn't for those parent groups. They got me to the specialists. They got me to the research. All three of us have learned so much about how to research articles, all of the medical stuff that you can access online. We've all learned how to get through the clinical speak that is in those documents. And we bring them with us to doctor's appointments all the time because we don't have specialists in my area. We absolutely have to explain to our doctors all the time how our own illnesses work, how these medications are working together to make our life better. We don't have any dysautonomia specialists. We don't have any MCAS specialists. We don't even have an EDS specialist. My cardiologist and my oldest child's cardiologist, she's an adult now, knows absolutely nothing about dysautonomia at all. But he's more than happy to go through the papers that I bring and learn. Find a doctor who's willing to learn after they've left medical school.
Which state are you in, out of curiosity?
Google Scholar is a good starting point for us. We read a lot of PubMed, a lot of stuff from NIH. Always on the lookout for sites where I can get more than just the synopsis. There have been times I have emailed the people who wrote the articles, hey, is there any way that I can get a copy of this? Here's why I'm looking for it. Sometimes I get a favorable response. Sometimes I don't. That's okay. If I have to buy it, I'll not have sodas for a month and I'll go buy it if I need to. Sometimes I've been able to get a doctor's office to do it. That one's a lot more rare. It's happened once or twice though. Our immunologist is amazing and she's totally willing to splurge and get extra information for us.
But you
those
said
are probably our primaries.
There's no specialists in your area. I just wondered
Nope.
where you were living, which state?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
We have 2 teaching hospitals.
Wow.
One of them does sort of kind of have a clinic for pediatrics. It's not that good. They're trying. I will give them full props. They are trying. They are learning. It is way better than it was 6 years ago. Way better than it was 6 years ago. They are absolutely the doctors who are still willing to learn. And in another 2 or 3 years, they're probably going to be miles ahead of where they are right now, which is fantastic for the kids who are behind us. My kids are all about to be adult. So it's not helpful for them, but that's okay. It's made giant strides in the last 6 years. But even they themselves won't say that they are specialists specifically in dysautonomia, but they do have a GI, a cardiologist, a neurologist who are all working together, trying to put pieces together. But self-admittedly, they have a long way to go, but they have absolutely come miles from where they were when we started this journey.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for having shared your experience with us today.
I hope it can help someone.
I'm sure it will. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'm Dr. Leonard Weinstock, a guy who's been prescribing LDN since 2005, and I've seen the wonders, and I keep on seeing them, especially in hard-to-diagnose conditions. They're not that hard to do, but once you know about mast cell activation syndrome, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, you'll find that 17% of your friends or relatives have one or more of these conditions, and you can help them. We're making a documentary to wake up the medical community, to educate the population, but we need funding. So please fund whatever you can afford, no matter how little. www.mcasfund.com. That's mcasfund.com.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.